The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV, the voice for... Hi, this is the most amazing collection I have read so far. I'm a readingaholic, Dustin Pickering. You know me from Parrot Literary Corner. This is the Literary Parrot, available at Amazon.com and its various affiliates. If you have not seen this collection, it's 249 pages of glorious global literature in a contemporary vein. This covers a lot of subjects, from the coronavirus to violence on the streets, to love, to romance. Everything you can imagine is in this collection, and you should buy it now. I'll tell you why. It's a collection of unique voices from the Literary Parrot. People have been on our show, have been participated in this, or have been published on our website, newyorkparrot.com. So please, I implore you, buy a copy. Thank you, and
Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Hi, welcome to New York Parrot's Literary Corner. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. I'd like to remind viewers that today is the 200th episode milestone. So we welcome comments, questions for our guest, and we will love to address any thoughtful comments you would like to leave for us. We would love to hear from you. So please feel free to comment on our 200th episode milestone. This is a historical event for poets in the writing community in general. We're the only show offering this right now. So please feel free to join in and watch and suggest to your friends. Today we have Colleen Kearney Rich, who is the author of the chapbooks, Things You Won't Tell Your Therapist, from Finishing Line Press in 2019, and Bunny Man Bridge from A3 Press. Her writing has been published in the literary journals Smoke Long Quarterly, Wigleaf, Matchbook, and Pinhead Chapel, among others. One of the founding editors of So to Speak, a feminist journal of language and art. She has an MFA from George Mason University in Virginia, where she also works. Thanks for joining us today, Colleen, for our 200th episode. It's great to have you. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. This is exciting. 200 shows.
Yeah, it's been quite a lot of work, and I also want to mention that I'm at another location for a couple of weeks for our viewers, just in case you're watching and you're curious why we don't have a backdrop. That's why. So, how would you describe your writing style, and how has it evolved over the years that you've written, and how do you recognize that?
Well, first of all, I primarily write flash fiction, which is fiction under 1,000 words. And it can be anything from, there's a lot of different terms. Like micro is very short. It's usually under 250. And that's what my chapbook is a collection of. When I was in my MFA program, I wrote more traditional stories. I was really attracted to people like Raymond Carver. So when I discovered Flash and the brevity of Flash, it was really kind of exciting for me. And it took a long time to get to a point where I could publish Flash, because it takes a really delicate hand, and it takes a while to learn kind of like the rhythm of it. But once I did, I've had some success in placing things at places like Smoke Long, which is like the top of the game. Flash.
Excellent. So congratulations on that. I'm curious, what is Bunny Man Bridge? Is it a fictional or real place, and how does it find its way in the chapbook?
That actually is it's a hybrid, because Bunny Man Bridge does exist, and it's not far from my home. And there's lots of legends about it, about a man who supposedly was an escaped asylum person and was living at the bridge, and they found bunny carcasses. But ultimately, none of that is true. It's just a good urban legend. And my story, which I have here. It's actually A3 Press does these really cool little folding. They call them maps for some of the things that they do. So, and they do a lot of poetry, but because my Bunnyman Bridge story was kind of a segmented piece of fiction, I was able to come up with, they needed like 11 or 12 segments to make the book work, and I was able to break it up into it. So he doesn't, I don't think, ordinarily publish a lot of fiction, but he was able, that's Sean at A3 Press, he was able to turn it into a really fun little, it's almost like an artist book.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity amongst publishers. I know there's one called Ethel Zine that I've recently become aware of, that they do stitched editions of their of I think poetry books mostly. And it's really fascinating how, you don't just have poets and writers and fiction writers and playwrights all being creative. The publishers themselves get creative too. So it's really fascinating how the whole industry can just work its way into the creative process.
I've gone to a couple of places where they kind of exhibit and sell zines, which are basically folded pieces of paper for the most part, and that's kind of like a fascinating segment of self-publishing. That it's kind of edgy. I've really enjoyed going around and like looking at some particularly people who are artists themselves. They really do some imaginative stuff on just like one sheet of paper.
Right. It's really fun too. I'm a publisher myself with Transcendent Zero Press, and we started off with Harbinger Asylum. It was basically a folded papers and a little zine, as they call it. And I was inspired by the punk rock community to do a kind of poetry zine. So what is the things you won't tell your therapist? And is it therapeutic writing, or is it humorous? And does it explore difficult situations, or what exactly is has the title reference the work itself?
The title reference is to a story that I published in Smoke Long, which is about teen suicide. So that one is dark, but I hope there is some humor in the book. It is a collection of short fiction, and that is the title story. And honestly, I was trying to do like a list story where you would list things, and it never quite worked, and it turned into things you won't tell your therapist, which is very much like a poem in a way, because it's and this is one of the things that I love about flash fiction, is they frequently will borrow from other forms like poetry, and there's a lot of repetition in that story. So but it is about an actual teen suicide, and my observation of the students at the time. Both of my children were in high school. They're both college students now, and that was something that was really going on in our community at that time, and it turned out in my writing in a couple different ways.
Interesting. Do you think that writing could exist without struggle in the dark side of life?
No, but I do try very hard, because I feel like a lot of people, I feel like it's sometimes an easy out, like to write a book where somebody dies, like to write a story where there's some kind of violence, like it's almost too easy to grab the emotion. So since I've written some of those kind of emotionally dense stories, I've kind of backed off a little bit and tried to do some different things, and tried to work more on the humor aspects of life to try to bring a lightness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to be an optimist, but to also be an honest optimist, to look at life fully and engage with it fully as a writer, regardless if it's poetry, fiction, plays, or, even music or anything else. You want to represent life in its fullest, but you don't want to be decadent about it.
Right.
So how do you balance the feeling of trying to not be too dark, not to be, I don't know, I guess the best word would be nihilistic, without sort of a value system attached to the work itself? How do you manage to balance like a kind of healthy optimism with the dark side of life?
Oh, that's hard, because I mean that's really what I'm attracted to. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite books is Station 11,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of dark because it's kind of the end of the world. It's, an apocalypse of sorts with a flu, not unlike what we just lived through.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I didn't feel like that. There were dark moments, but I appreciate it, the people moving forward, and how she handled it. It's a beautiful book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. So, and I'm a little squeamish too, like when things have trigger warnings on them and stuff. I don't tend to gravitate towards
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of
Right.
stories and poems.
Yeah, I'm personally, I kind of lost interest in a lot of the stuff that's just fruitlessly dark and violent, or there's no real meaning or purpose to what's being said. Meaningless, jabber. And I just lost interest in that. I know a lot of writers, especially young writers, tend to gravitate, especially if they're high school dropouts or something like that. They like to play at poetry, and that's my advice to poets, and writers out there is, learn to develop some sort of meaning from your craft. That's why else do you write? But moving into your editorial work as well. So you have So to Speak, that you edit with, and so what is your experience in editorial work? How do you feel about judging another writer's work, and what do you look for when you're doing your editing?
Well, I've moved on from So to Speak.
Okay.
That's really for students that are still enrolled, and they're doing an amazing job. I cannot
Excellent.
believe that the magazine has survived so many years.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited about that. Right now, I am a fiction editor at Literary Mama,
Okay.
which is a lot of fun, and
Mhm.
it's interesting to see. If you had asked me when I started doing it, like what kinds of fiction I was going to get, I would not have been able to predict. There are so many different ways and lenses of looking at motherhood and the whole parenting experience. It's
Mhm.
been really fascinating.
Interesting. That is fascinating how you can take one subject and people have, so many perspectives and approaches and how they, view it. Can you give an example, maybe? Like, give us a couple of examples of how different, fiction you got that it really appealed to you because it was a unique perspective.
One of my favorite stories, and I'm afraid I'm not going to get the writer's name. She actually is a playwright in California, and I'm hoping her name will come to me. She actually sent this kind of speculative story about a woman who wished her children away.
Hmm.
And I'm getting chills just thinking about the story. And she struggles in the story because she regrets it immediately. Like when she says it and wishes them away, and she keeps looking for evidence that they were there, and she finds evidence, but nobody believes her, including her husband, and they think she's mentally ill. But it was such a captivating story, and such a love letter to the
Mhm.
three children she wished away. It was really beautiful, and I wish I could remember her story. I want to say her last name was Danger.
Hmm.
Kate
Interesting.
Danger, maybe? Kate Anger? I'll have to look it up. I feel bad.
Well,
But
sometimes there are memory lapses. Sometimes when you're, especially when you're doing editing and a lot of writing, there's so many people you come across, and you can't really remember everybody, I guess. And but it's good. That sounds like a fascinating story. It's sort of like, she felt guilty and wrote the story, and sort of transformed her guilt into something more deeper in nature, to where she maybe even had a realization in the story about why she felt that way, or why that could possibly be something she could feel. Interesting. Do you find in your own writing that you ever realize something that when you're in the process of writing, something just pops up and you're like, wow, I never thought I felt that way, or I had that feeling?
Actually, sometimes I have the opposite problem, because I'm interested in something and I'm writing about it because I find it interesting. And then, like, because it's flash, it's tiny, and then people will want more. And I'm like, I got nothing else.
Right.
This is the beginning, middle, and end of why I was interested in this. And I don't know. For example, I have a story coming out this month, and it's a tiny story. I want to say it's probably under 600 words. And like, people kept asking me, like, well, what's going on in her life? Why does she feel this way? And I'm like, I didn't get that far. It's what it is. And they're ready for like a whole novel about this woman, and I'm like, 600 words, sorry.
Give us more. Like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. That's it. That's all I can do. I'm a little strived out of this particular story. Do you think that you're, getting an MFA developed your writing talents or career in creative writing, and how so?
It did, because and actually I chose my MFA because I wanted to work with the faculty that were at George Mason. And I had read at least one of the professors before I decided to go there. But it was not only was I exposed to those faculty members who I still know and I'm friends with, but they brought in writers. They brought in big name writers, and you got to have seminars with them, and they read your work. And that was really important to me. And the opportunity to be in a community where, like, you talk about writing, it's probably one of the only places where you can be where people really get you. Like, they're your people. And most of the time, when you're going around day-to-day life, people might say, like, oh yeah, I get you're a writer. Yeah, but they don't really. They don't. So it's comforting to be around your people and to have that feedback.
Yeah, I usually get, oh, you have a nice hobby, or something of that nature. And to me, it's life. It's it's just what life is. Life itself is aesthetic phenomena to me. And people don't understand that worldview too well. And from my personal experience, most people just don't view things that way. And when you're around other writers and you're talking with other writers, it's like they'll totally get what you mean. It's like they'll see exactly what you're saying and how you feel. So, how did you choose George Mason? Was it the specific writers that you had admired prior to application, or was there
that was part of it. Part of it also was it was near me. So, and I really didn't know that much. I was pretty much, my creative writing teacher as an undergraduate had suggested some places, but and I think Irvine was one of the places she suggested I apply. And I just could not see traveling across country. So staying in Virginia, and as I said, I had read Richard Bausch, who ended up being my thesis director. I had read Richard Bausch's collection of stories called Spirits, and it knocked me out. It knocked me out. So I really wanted to work with him. And then equally, I got the opportunity to work with Alan Shoes from NPR, Steve Goodwin, Susan Shreve. I even got to take a class with Carolyn Forche when she was at Mason before I can't remember where she is now. She's not at Mason anymore.
Yeah, she's excellent. I've read several of her works, and I really admire her. I'm mostly into poetry, but I do read a lot of fiction too, and I just focus on poetry mostly for myself. And I'm definitely familiar with Caroline Forche. She's a fabulous writer, and she did the book called I think it was called Against Forgetting. It's a big anthology. It's historical. It's about poetry of witness, and I think she may have even coined that term. I'm not quite sure.
I think she may have. Yeah. Really powerful stuff. I have that book in the other room.
Excellent. It's a great collection. I've read through some, and it gives you a lot of historical context to this poetry, and a lot of volumes won't do that. They just have the poet and maybe a bio, and this gives you some sort of historical, and you learn a little bit about history throughout reading it, about the various conflicts going throughout history in the 20th century. It's really fascinating. I definitely recommend it to our viewers, to take a look and find that. So what do you think, in your opinion, do you have a daily writing habit, and does that benefit you, or do you just write when some ideas are present? And
I do have a daily habit, but it's because I also write for my work.
Mm-hmm.
So I write a lot of articles for George Mason University. I do a lot of profiles. So I really love the storytelling aspect of it, but my own stuff, I usually need a deadline. Mm-hmm. So I do often trick myself into it, unless I'm at a residency or something. Mm-hmm. I love going to residencies when I can, because what I love about it is you can open up what you're working on and like leave it up on the computer and like have it open the whole day and write and make a cup of tea. And where real life is not like that. Real life is, you're lucky you get some time, and then somebody interrupts you, and maybe you have children that need something, so I try to set deadlines, like whether it's a contest or something that I'm trying to get ready for, and that helps keep the pressure on. So
interesting. Well, we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back with some of your flash fiction if you want to share that with us. So we have Colleen Rich on our 200th historical episode today. So enjoy your break. We'll be right back.
Keep watching the New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Welcome back to our 200th episode. We have Colleen Rich, and she's going to share some of her work. Remember, if you're viewing right now, you can leave some comments to us and to Colleen as well. So let's hear some of your writing.
Since we talked about it, I was going to read the title story from Things You Won't Tell Your Therapist.
Okay.
So, and this is Flash.
Okay.
The reason you have panic attacks at school is because things move too fast. There are too many people in the hallways and the bells are too loud. The reason you get confused and have to think for a very long time before you answer a question, any question, is because you were only getting about 3 hours of sleep. The reason you had good grades in chemistry and don't now is because Jay was your lab partner. You were never really good at chemistry. He taught you everything you knew. The reason you didn't go to the memorial service is because you couldn't watch those fake people crying and carrying on like they were best friends with him. The reason you can't sleep is because you keep playing that last bus ride over and over again and how he called your name and yelled bye to you. The reason you didn't get to say goodbye was you were too busy gossiping about what a hoe Ava is. The reason you can't remember his face, not clearly, is because you waited too long to turn around and only saw the back of his head and his red backpack as he stepped off the bus.
Interesting. You really capture a lot of the conflicts a student may face there, especially if you have psychological issues. And I think that one of the things I noticed that you make note of is that how fast paced and how stressful it can be to be in the student environment. And I think that you capture that very well. And that may be something that a lot of students are experiencing and not recognizing where they're coming from in that. And so maybe that will be something they don't share with their therapist, like, oh, school just is too fast paced for me. And so I have stress related issues to that. That's very interesting. Would you like to share another piece?
Sure. This one is in an anthology called This Is What America Looks Like. Okay. And it's by Washington Writers Publishing House. Mm-hmm. And it's a piece of Flash called Only the Knife Knows the Heart of a Pumpkin.
Okay.
The pumpkin was perfect. A Cinderella pumpkin, her daughter called it. And they all had to agree. It did resemble the carriage from the Disney movie. But it was hectic those weeks before Halloween, with William's big project going off the rails at work and the lice outbreak at school. Costumes were thrown together after a quick trip to the party store. Then there was the parade in the neighborhood to get ready for, and Lisa found herself tossing cottony cobweb stuff onto the shrubs and leaving the decorations at that. The pumpkins they bought sat on the porch until her son insisted they carve one. In a rush, they chose his pumpkin to carve because it was shaped like Frankenstein's head and easy to put a face on. The boy was finally content that the holiday was progressing as necessary, and Lisa managed to keep the seeds from the garbage. After they walked the neighborhood and the kids surveyed their loot, Lisa popped the pumpkin seeds into the oven and turned them into a snack. The Cinderella pumpkin sat long on the porch long after Frankenstein caved in and was dumped in the compost. Lisa couldn't let Cinderella be composted. The seeds, she said, in protest. She could still roast the seeds. Then they had to make plans for Thanksgiving. Were they really going to travel again? William moved Cinderella to beside the compost pile. Lisa had forgotten all about the pumpkin until she saw it one morning while making breakfast. Day after day, she watched it through the kitchen window, in rain, in frost, in snow, in the slanted winter light. Not even the squirrels wanted Cinderella. Some mornings, the sun hit the pumpkin just right, and it looked brand new, fresh. But it couldn't be, right? One morning, Lisa discovered the pumpkin had deflated in the night, as if someone had let the air out of it. It's time, William told her. She knew he was right, but she missed that orange face.
Is there a symbolism there you're exploring with the pumpkin?
I think, again, it's like the pace of life. Okay. And like even your best intentions. Like after a certain point, you're just going through the motions, and
Right.
And the little pumpkin that never gets carved.
Interesting. So there's a sort of feeling of like, putting it aside and almost, I mean, it's like an item that is you have intentions for it. And it can even go back to a sort of like the motherhood story you refer to, like a sort of similar theme. If you ask me, it's like very much a sense of, you want to do something, or you want to feel something or participate in something, and you're sort of not able to do it, and it just doesn't pan out the way you expect. And in that case, I mean, motherhood is a great example of that. I'm sure for a lot of mothers out there, they're not quite sure what to expect from motherhood. Yeah. But it's quite an interesting story. I'm fascinated by the way you described the pumpkin, especially towards the end with the light striking it. And it looks brand new, but it's not. And you sort of like, it's time to let go of it now.
Quite move on. Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of again. Yeah. You said the pace of life and how our best intentions or our intentions don't pan out sometimes. We keep trying to draw them out, and it just doesn't work out. And so it gets to the point where it's just let's let go. Even if we have those little flickers of hope, sometimes you got to let go of things. So what is your philosophy of feminism, and how did that play into your editorial work with So to Speak?
Actually, what's fascinating is we recently had a get together for So to Speak in the fall. And back when we started So to Speak in the 90s, we were really reacting to some of those statistics about how many men are published compared to women. Mm-hmm. And we were really working to make sure we women had a place at the table. And right. Now it's grown to this whole intersectional feminist project where, now that we were able to make a place at the table, the women who have taken over, have really, brought in people of color, gender fluidity. They're really doing some remarkable things with that journal. And for us, we just wanted an opportunity to talk about and read and write things that we were interested in, things that were of concern to women.
How do you think editors and the large swath of editors out there, how can they address and bridge the gap of female representation in publishing?
Now I feel like it's kind of moved on more than, it's not just, boys against the girls anymore. It's just making sure that everyone has an opportunity and really trying to think outside the box. This summer I went to Swanee Writers Conference, and I was in a workshop there, and you could read another person's story and know that you're not the audience for it, but that doesn't mean there was still work to be done with the writing. I might not have been the target audience for that piece, but we need all these voices, and we need the opportunity to see the different perspectives.
Right. Absolutely. And I think more perspectives on the table make the environment richer and more interesting. And I think it's definitely something a goal to work towards. I'm just curious how we can go about that. I find that for lack of a better phrase, the affirmative action approach is it's sort of not really natural in my opinion. And it feels like it's too forced. And I'd like to see that representation happen naturally for more people to feel welcome to publish and to enter the publishing industry. And I think that the demographics being shifted so much from the white male voice, we have so many different kinds of people in this country that I think that's going to start happening naturally. I don't know how you feel about that.
I do think, like, I've noticed a lot of publications doing kind of targeted, even agents also doing kind of targeted appeals. And I think that is helping, because when you can bring some of those voices to the forefront and people identify with them, the people who are being silenced have the opportunity to come forward, because they can,
No, that's true.
they can like visualize it, where and I think we haven't tried to do that at Literary Mama yet, where we make a deliberate call, but we've had some nice diversity, and actually I do get submissions from all over the world.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's great. And how do you think you reach such a wide audience in your publication?
I think it's purely online, so it's people sharing. So, because I mean, I always am discovering new journals, and because we have like the tools now, it's a lot. There's gone are the days where you had to put like something in an envelope and mail it somewhere, and you had to
a lot
wait
more
for
tedious.
these people to choose you. Now, I mean, if you're not finding it, you can create your own literary journal. I've seen people do it.
And you can enter. That's how I entered the literary, field. Is just started my own journal, and it started off as a call for people on the internet, just asking people that I knew on internet as friends if they wanted to write something for the journal, and it's evolved quite a bit. I'm getting a lot of submissions from all over the world, and I have no idea how it grew so fast. It's been 10 years of publishing for me, but the whole project just kept building and building and building, and I found my responsibilities grew as I developed as a world journal, and do you ever find there's like a lot of challenges in publishing, like for instance, sustaining the project is really hard for a lot of people because lack of funding, lack of interest from people. Why would you even do it if you're not getting anything back other than if you're not even getting back a sustained interest in what you're doing? It feels like you're just wasting your time.
No, I don't feel like they're wasting their time, because I have seen some journals I love cease publication, but it is taxing on you, and you start doing it for love, because and to uplift your other writers, and then then life intervenes, and at some point your own work needs to take priority, or else you're just going to always be on the publishing end. Like at some point you have to stop reading and sit down and write.
Absolutely. It's hard to balance the being a publisher or an editor and then also being a writer yourself. I mean, I would say all publishers are also writers, and at some point they're just like, you get exhausted with reading other people's work. So do you have a final message for the viewers?
Oh gosh. Check out Flash. I think there are a lot of poetry lovers in your audience, but I do think they would find Flash satisfying if they check out some places like Smoke Long and Pithead Chapel. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, some of the journals mentioned in your flyer, and guys out there, viewing, can just check those out and find something sustainable to enjoy in those works. And of course, any of those authors in those journals that want to be on our show, definitely get in touch with us on here. We'll tell you how at the end of the program. Do you have any shout outs or thank yous you'd like to to say?
Well, I should thank Finishing Line Press. Finishing Line Press published this, and it was Leah Maines, the publisher, who helped connect us. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, Leah. And then A3 Press is Sean, and I'm going to not remember his last name, but Sean, and he's working out of Barcelona. So, but check out A3 Press's website. They have a lot of cool things on there. And Literary Mama. Check out Literary Mama. Send Literary Mama some stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Colleen, for joining us today. It's been really pleasant talking with you. And I think that's good. We had a voice that wasn't just poetry. We had somebody come on talking about other forms of literature. So I really want to welcome people that are not just poets, but also other literary forms also to come on the show and take a look at what we're doing. So this has been our 200th episode. I want to remind viewers that this is a milestone. This is a historical milestone. What other show for creative writers do you know that has had 200 consecutive episodes other than the Parrot Literary Corner? So if you want to get in touch with us and be on the show, and we want any kind of writer, any creative minds out there, I definitely invite you to get in touch with us at Literary Corner at NewYorkParrot.com. And that's me, Dustin Pickering. Just address me as the host of the Literary Corner. And if you would like to donate a little extra money, if you have some to spare and you want to help our production costs and all of the various elements that we put together, paypal.me/NYParrot right there in that banner. And again, this is the 200th episode. This is quite a milestone for a show of this kind. And we're glad that Colleen Rich was able to be available for our 200th milestone TV show. So again, I'm Dustin Pickering. And remember, the series 2 of Literary Parrot will be out soon in December 1st. Before you know it, it'll be time for Christmas. And you guys can get a couple of extra copies for family and friends. And we'll have it available definitely for you at that point. So thank you for viewing today. Subscribe to our channel. Blink, blink, blink. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And please be a part of our group and our entertainment facility here. And then get in touch with your other creative writer friends and ask them to join us and request an interview, as I mentioned, at Literary Corner and NewYorkParrot.com. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you again, Colleen. And have an excellent afternoon.
I'm at that age where I appreciate every sunrise, sunset, and all the hours in between. The age that causes me to notice the rhythmic timing of each breath. A reminder to thank God for granting me another day. I'm at that age where joints begin to stiffen and maybe I don't move as fluently as I did at 22. But I'm also at that age where I realize many didn't even get to see today. So I pray on bent and aching knee, thank you, God, for blessing me. I'm at that age where I notice my kids making some of the same mistakes that I did. And I remind myself that although never easy, I made it through and so will they. I'm at that age where I understand that money never buys true happiness. But I'm also at that age where I understand it definitely does help to have a bit. I'm at that age where six-pack abs still attract. But I'm also at that age where the behavior of a true gentleman will stop me in my tracks. I'm at that age where I know what it means to be a woman alone with how to treat my man. Beginning with listening as he explains what he needs from me. You see, there may be many similarities, but all men are not the same. I'm at that age where I realize good things don't come to those who wait. They go to those who educate, plan, sacrifice, work, and repeat over and over and over again. I'm at that age where I appreciate spending time with family, whether we're on good terms or not. Because I'm at that age where I'm losing so many people that I care about. I'm at that age where I'm bearing down on that age where there are more chapters of my life in past instead of future tense. But I'm at that age where I refuse to give up. I continue to climb, to create, to improve, love, and share, bearing my soul to the universe while honoring my ancestors, my God, and myself, while becoming the best version of me possible, because I'm at that age.
The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot.